Okay, hello. Now, this is the first video of a series of videos that we prepared for business analysis for IT systems or digital business analysis course. And of course, we have to start with the discussion of why business analysis in the first place. Okay, let's start. Okay, let's discuss about some scenarios that currently people are really busy with. Okay, now you can imagine a city suffering from excessive traffic in urban areas, and existing infrastructure is not enough to really handle the growing car traffic. Or pick another one. You're a large company, you're working in a large company, and you're increasingly facing problems in complying with the increased number of regulations and standards that you need to comply with. Or these are problems perhaps, but we can also talk about some opportunities. Now you're a supermarket and you notice that you have a huge parking lot which is usually empty at night. How can this resource be used to generate more revenue? Now you can imagine that there are lots of questions that you need to ask yourself to be able to answer or to come up with some solutions for these these problems, or to make most out of your opportunities. Now, for instance, what activities do you need to do in order to solve this problem or make use of this opportunity, as I said? Or what do you need to know? What do you need to know about the domain, the context, the research methods or the methods that you need to apply with? Who would you need to talk to? What stakeholders are really critical that you need to get their input and perhaps get their involvement as well? What kind of alternative solutions do you find for solving this problem, or to come up with a kind of a solution for this problem? How would the best solution look like? I mean, are you aiming at a high revenue, or are you aiming at something else, or market share, for instance? What aspects do you think matters in selecting the best solution? All these questions essentially are good examples of the questions that we ask ourselves as business analysts. So basically, business analysis are all about finding or answering these kind of questions. So let's rewind back and back to 80s, where we have started to see a significant decrease in the storage costs, leading to in fact, widespread of use of computer technology and software and hardware used in business, basically or mainly to increase efficiency and effectiveness in operations, which in fact has changed the way we do business, and now we cannot imagine any business operating without, in fact, without such digital systems. But the problem is that many projects failed, particularly at those times, mainly because they exceeded the estimated time and budget cost and failed to deliver the expected value for the business. And that's exactly the time when the business analysis term was coined. And that's mainly because we understand, or let's say we understood at the time, that business and IT have different type of terminology, different type of language, and they're using different type of concepts to communicate with each other. But the success can only be attained when you can set up a structured communication between these two sides, business and IT. So there was a need to have a discipline that would bring these two sides together, and that's that's how and why business analysis come to being. Now, let's talk about the project success rates. Let's talk about I mentioned that there were a lot of projects that were kind of failed or exceeded the time and cost budget estimates. Let's talk about some numbers that really showed us what the actual case is in real life. Now, there's this company called Standish Group that they have been doing reporting of, or let's say recording of the project success rates for quite a long time now, and they identify projects in three let's say, categories. Now, you might have successful projects which succeed in satisfying the cost, time, and scope quality constraints. There are like three things that are really very important. And those challenge projects which were not able to achieve as planned in at least one of these above dimensions, time, cost, and scope quality dimensions, and the failed projects which were basically cancelled or never being used. Okay, so what do you think? What would your estimate be in the percentage of successful or failed projects, for that matter? So basically, that is how it looks like. You might see that about, let's say, one of the 5 projects that are running right now basically fail. You throw away your money for that. And only, let's say, 30% of the projects that are running, that has run in fact for the last quite many years, have been successful in the sense that we were able to estimate the cost and time and the scope quality aspects, and we were able to stay within those limits. And only 30% of the cases, and a bit more than half of these projects basically were challenged. They were either costed a little bit more, or the duration was longer than estimated, or we needed to sacrifice the quality, or some aspects, features were basically removed or were not developed in the first place, or in fact combination of both. So what should we learn? Or let's say, how was the case? That was the report in 2015, 5 years ago. In fact, if you look at the kind of the progress over the years, you would see that the changes over the years, at least from 2011 to 2015, were not much different. So we're still talking about very similar percentages over successful challenges and failed projects. But if you look at the success rates with respect to the project size, you would also immediately notice that as you go, let's say, as you target larger projects, the fail rate increases quite significantly. So the smaller project, obviously, in fact, that makes quite a lot of sense. The smaller the project, the higher it is for you to really make it a successful one. Okay, now this is an international, let's say, report that gathers information or gathers event project success rates from many other sources. How about the case here in Netherlands? Now, I've been following this Dutch news.nl, and I occasionally see news about the IT success and stories, and also stories that tells about the failures. So for instance, this one, Social Insurance Bank scraps new IT system which costs about 44 million euros. Or yet another example where the original budget for the government IT project, new food safety system, is basically about 60 million euros over budget. That's another one. So another one, police spend another, let's say some million of euros, and in this case 400,000 euros for almost nothing. Okay, perhaps the most striking one, which came about in 2014 and 15, is about a report that investigated the large projects that are sponsored, that are really done in the government. And according to that, Dutch government lost between 1 to 5 billion euros every year for failing IT projects. Now, of the projects with a budget starting with 7.5, the rate of success is just 7%. Just like out of 100% projects, you just get 7 of them successful. That's quite a shame, I would say. Among all projects, about 36% just failed. The new system was never used whatsoever. We just wasted our money on those failed projects, and only like 34% were challenged, like they have doubtful value, produce unexpected results, it was too expensive or took too long, and so on. So in fact, we have a lot to do, still a lot to do. But before that comes, so we were able to identify, we have been, in fact, not we mean as a researchers, we've been working on the reasons for these failures, or what we can do to avoid these failures. And you would see there are top factors, what we call top factors leading to failure, a list of factors that we know, if you really not handle it properly, lead to failure. Lack of user involvement input is just number one in any kind of an initiative you have in an organization. Incomplete requirements, incomplete specifications of what you really need, in what kind of a problem you have, and how does the solution look like. The definition, the detailed specification of that, lack of detailed specification is again number one, or at least among the top factors that would lead to a failure. This is very, very important. Poorly defined or not defined outcome. What would you expect at the end? We don't even define it properly. Insufficient communication among the stakeholders, lack of executive support, and unrealistic expectations from your projects are all very well known factors that we know, in fact, would lead to a failure. And these are all what business analysts have to kind of handle, have to consider when they are confronted with a real business problem. And in fact, the techniques that we're going to see, all what we're going to do in this course is to avoid these factors to materialize, to be uncovered, to how to handle these problems, how to avoid these things happening. In fact, this is what BA is all about. And particularly business analysis or business analysis involved in the early stage of the requirements of the solution design, where it is much easier, much more cheaper to handle the issues. So in this figure, you would see that if you look at the, let's say, system development life cycle, starting with the requirements definition, design, build, test, and operation, or at the very beginning, it costs much less to deal with the problems. It costs much less to really clarify the things than it is when you proceed towards the end of the projects. And in operation, it costs much less. In fact, we have really real numbers that have worked on this thing. So here we see the typical life cycle activities like requirements analysis, design, coding, unit testing, and maintenance. These are kind of the phases that you typically go through in any kind of an IT system project or a digital project. And this figure that I'm going to show you would tell you exactly how much it would cost for you to fix any kind of a problem. So if you are in an early stage like requirements analysis phase, you're trying to understand what requirements the system should have, we're talking about like putting 1 or 2, whatever the cost multiplier, 1 or 2, let's say, days, okay? If you're in the design, and if that issue that you had, in fact, were kept hidden at the very beginning, you would have to spend about 5 days to handle that thing. If you're in the coding, we're talking about double or twice the effort that you spend in the design, or let's say even 10 times the effort that you would spend in the requirements analysis phase. Unit testing, as you can see, it increases almost exponentially, and acceptance testing is huge. And if you're in the maintenance phase, meaning that the users are already in the operation and using it, it is immense. In fact, I can't see this in properly, so it would look like something like this. It's a huge exponential increase as you go towards the end. So what this tells you, tells us that business analysis very important, and we are talking about particularly the early stages of system development. And it's very, very important to handle your issues at the very beginning, to have a very clear, let's say, definition of what the problem is and what the solution should look like. And essentially, going back to the very first slides, business analysis is basically linking the business and IT, understanding what the business problem is, and solving with the technology that we have. So when we look at what the business analysis is, we have a formal definition that I'm going to read to you, but we'll go into that in depth in later videos. Business analysis is a practice of enabling change in an enterprise or in an organization by defining the needs, requirements if you like, and recommending solutions, particular definitions of these solutions that deliver value or value propositions, perhaps we should say, to some stakeholders. Okay, this is very generic definition, but we'll come back to that later on in later slides. For now, see you later.